The sleek steel door creaked open as I stepped into my favorite nook of solace, Brad's vinyl haven. The rich aroma of mahogany shelves and well-loved records enveloped me. This place felt more like home than the loft Kyle and I shared. "Morning, Ellis," Brad called out, a warm smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "You're here early." I forced a half smile, my mind still reeling from the previous night's blow-up with Kyle. "Hey, Brad. Yeah, I just needed some time away." His brow furrowed with concern as I busied myself reorganizing the new arrivals. Brad was family, the kind you choose, not the one thrust upon you. The bell above the door chimed, and I tensed, hoping it wasn't Kyle come to patch things up yet again. But it was just Darren, one of our regulars. "Ellis, did you check out that rare Zeppelin album I told you about?" Darren asked, his passion for vinyl as infectious as ever. "Not yet, but I'm dying to get my hands on it," I replied, grateful for the distraction his enthusiasm provided. As we chatted, my thoughts drifted back to the night before. Kyle's words echoed like a broken record. "Ellis, we can't go through with this wedding. Harper called. There's been an emergency." Harper. The name ignited a fury in my chest. That manipulative vixen had caused enough trouble when she and Kyle were together in college. Why was she resurfacing now, days before our wedding? "You can't be serious." I'd fired back at Kyle. "After everything she put you through?" His stoic expression revealed nothing. "I'm going to see her." Just like that, my world shattered. In that moment, I realized our entire relationship may have been a fragile lie. I met Kyle through Brad's wide network of music lovers and vinyl enthusiasts. At first, his passion for curating the perfect playlist and his grand dreams of opening a music-themed bar captivated me. We bonded over our shared adoration for classic rock anthems and spent hours dissecting album artwork. "This is where the magic happens," Kyle had said one afternoon, ushering me into his cozy studio apartment overflowing with records. Our connection felt electric, like finding your soulmate on the dance floor at Woodstock. Those early days blurred into a whirlwind romance fueled by our ambitions and love for the vinyl scene. Kyle would spin tales of opening his dream venue while I envisioned curating the ultimate vinyl collection for Brad's shop. Everything seemed perfect, until Harper re-entered the picture. At first, Kyle insisted she was just an old friend, brushing off my discomfort whenever she'd randomly drop by our place. But her lingering glances and tactile familiarity with Kyle raised red flags. "Ellis, you've got to try these freshly remastered Zeppelin tracks," he'd say, oblivious to Harper's eyes trailing his every move. I confided in Brad, desperately seeking wisdom. "Why has Kyle been acting so distant lately? And why is his ex always around?" Brad's usual warmth dimmed as he met my gaze. "Sometimes people struggle to let go of the past, kiddo. Don't ignore those gut feelings. They're there for a reason." His cryptic advice gnawed at me as Harper's presence persisted, like a scratch on a prized vinyl. When she started casually lounging on our couch during Guy's night, draping herself over Kyle, I could no longer ignore the sinking feeling. One night, after Harper finally left, I confronted Kyle. "Why is she here again?" "It's getting uncomfortable." He scoffed, eyes narrowed. "She's just an old friend from my early days in the scene. Don't be so paranoid, Ellis." But I couldn't shake the dread that my life was being flipped, the album skipping to a track I never wanted to hear. Harper's unwelcome presence became impossible to ignore. She'd casually swing by our loft, her floral perfume lingering like a dark cloud. And Kyle seemed unbothered, greeting her with that easy smile I once adored. "Hey, you're just in time for the new vinyl delivery," he'd say, ushering her inside without a second thought. I shot him exasperated looks, but he avoided my gaze. As Harper made herself at home on our living room couch, leafing through Kyle's prized record collection, I fought the urge to snap. One afternoon, I returned from Brad's shop to find them huddled together on the couch, lost in quiet whispers and reminiscence. Harper's hand rested on Kyle's thigh, intimately familiar. "There you are," Kyle said, his eyes finally meeting mine with a start. "We were just remembering that dive bar where we first met." Harper flashed me a sickly sweet grin. Such special memories. I forced a tight smile, my jaw clenched. Special memories she had no right reliving with my fiancé. Later that night, as we cleaned up from dinner, I finally erupted. "I can't take this anymore, Kyle," I cried, slamming plates into the sink. "Why is she always around? It's not normal." he sighed, rubbing his temples. Ellis, you're overreacting. Harper's my past. You're my future. My future? His empty reassurances rang hollow, like an old scratched vinyl skipping. The next few weeks were agonizing, with Harper constantly underfoot. She'd lounge around our loft, sipping wine as if she owned the place. One evening, as I seethed silently on the couch, she sidled up next to Kyle on the floor. Remember how we'd listened to these old blues albums for hours? She purred, pressing against him as she pored over his latest crates. Unable to stomach their intimacy any longer, I stormed out, my heart shattering with every step. In that moment, I realized our grand future might be just a bittersweet fantasy. The tension thickened like dense storm clouds rolling in. Harper's constant presence grated on my last nerve, and Kyle remained infuriatingly oblivious to my mounting frustration. One evening, as we prepped for our usual casual night-in with friends, Harper barged through the door without knocking. "Hey, lovebirds," she sang out, draping herself on the couch. "Don't mind me, just crashing your little party." I shot Kyle a pointed look, but he merely shrugged, utterly unfazed. As our friend circle trickled in, the atmosphere shifted. Harper commanded attention, loudly reminiscing about her glory days in the local music scene with Kyle. I watched, seething as she draped herself across his lap during an animated story. "Remember that dive bar where we'd slam tequila shots and rock out until last call?" She laughed, her hand lingering on his thigh. Unable to bear another moment, I retreated to the kitchen, fighting tears. Brad found me gripping the counter, knuckles white. "Ellis, you okay, kiddo?" His warm, fatherly voice soothed my frayed nerves. I shook my head, the words tumbling out in a breathless rush. "It's Harper, Brad. She's always here, hanging all over Kyle. I can't take her mind games anymore." He sighed heavily, pulling me into a comforting hug. "I know it's tough, but try not to let her get under your skin. That's exactly what she wants." Brad's sage advice was easier said than done. Over the next few weeks, Harper amped up her manipulative tactics. Casually wandering out of our bedroom, she'd smirk at me while straightening her rumpled clothes, or she'd leave her lacy undergarments strewn around in plain sight, daring me to react. The final straw came when I returned home from a long shift at the shop. Harper and Kyle were tangled together on the couch, his hands roaming intimately over her curves. My heart plummeted to my feet at the sickening sight. Kyle finally noticed me, his eyes widening in panic. "Babe, we were just—" But I didn't stick around to hear his feeble excuse. Grabbing my truck keys, I fled into the night, the chilly spring air biting my skin. At Brad's place, I collapsed in tears, my worst fears confirmed. "They're having an affair, aren't they?" I choked out between heaving sobs. Brad simply held me close, his silence speaking volumes. The night before our wedding, a sickening dread crept over me as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Kyle hadn't come home yet after running last-minute errands for the big day. But something felt off. Around 2 a.m., the front door finally creaked open, and Kyle stumbled in, reeking of stale beer and Harper's sickly sweet floral perfume. My stomach churned violently. "Ellis, you still up?" he slurred, collapsing onto the couch. I remained silent, my mind racing. Was this the final confirmation of his betrayal? After months of Harper's escalating mind games, the proof seemed irrefutable. Kyle passed out within minutes, leaving me alone with my swirling doubts. Visions of their intimate, casual intimacy on our very couch consumed my thoughts. I pictured Harper's smug smirk as she blatantly seduced him right under my nose. Dawn crept over the skyline, the first rays of sunlight filtering through the loft windows. In a few short hours, I was supposed to walk down the aisle and pledge my life to this man. But could I really go through with it, knowing his heart belonged to another? And rage-fueled determination burned within me, white-hot and unstoppable. Suddenly, everything became crystal clear. I wouldn't be the fool standing at that altar, only to inevitably get burned. Not this time. Grabbing my phone, I rapidly typed out a group message to our wedding party and families. "The wedding is off. Don't bother showing up." Kyle's phone buzzed incessantly from across the room, but I ignored it. Let him wake up to the chaos of his selfish actions. By the time he finally stirred, groggy and disoriented, the cancellation texts and voicemails were pouring in. "Whoa, what's going on?" he mumbled, massaging his throbbing temples. "Why are Mom and Dad blowing up my phone?" I emerged from the bedroom, my small duffel packed and jaw set with grim resolution. "Ah!" There's the beautiful bride-to-be, he slurred with a sloppy smile. Come here, baby. Don't you baby me, I spat, recoiling from his grasping hands. I'm not the one you'll be walking down the aisle with today. His brow furrowed in drunken confusion. Ellis, what are you talking about? I'm talking about you and your precious Harper. I exploded, hurling a couch cushion squarely at his head. I saw the signs. I knew your shady behavior was leading to this. Understanding finally flashed in his bleary eyes as he sank back onto the couch in resignation. So, I did what you failed to do. I hissed through gritted teeth. I canceled our wedding, our future together. Have fun with Harper. You two deserve each other. With that, I stormed out, the door slamming shut behind me with a satisfying finality. A new chapter was just beginning. I spent the morning systematically canceling every single wedding arrangement, from the church to the reception venue, florist, photographer, and more. With each crossed-off item on my list, a weight lifted from my shoulders. The satisfying finality was only amplified when my phone rang with Harper's number flashing across the screen. Hello? Her sickly sweet voice dripped with feigned concern. Ellis, oh my God, are you okay? Kyle is beside himself. He said you canceled the wedding, I scoffed audibly. Cut the act, Harper. We both know exactly why I called it off. There was a pause before she responded, her sugary tone turning acrid. Ah, I see the little bride finally grew a spine. This is your doing, I fired back, my grip tightening on the phone. You schemed and manipulated until you ruined everything. Oh, please, she sneered. Kyle came crawling back to me ages ago. If you were too naive to see it, that's on you. White-hot fury coursed through my veins at her callous admission. Before I could hurl another biting retort, the line went dead. I hurled my phone across the room with a primal scream of rage. A pounding at the door made me jump. I flung it open, coming face to face with Kyle, his eyes wild and hair disheveled. Ellis, he cried, grabbing my hands desperately. Cancel the wedding, Harper needs me. I wrenched away from his grasp, nostrils flaring. Consider it canceled for good, you lying snake. Kyle stepped back, running a trembling hand through his matted hair. Babe, you've got this all wrong. I would never cheat. Save it, I cut him off, squaring my jaw. I'm done being the stupid, naive girl who overlooks the obvious. You want to ditch our wedding for your precious Harper? Message received, loud and clear. Tears sprang to his eyes as realization dawned. Ellis, please, let me explain. But I'd heard enough. Slamming the door in his ashen face, I sank against it, sobs racking my body. In that moment, it felt like the life I'd hoped for had crumbled to ashes. A few hours later, a knock at the door roused me from my grief-stricken haze. I swung it open to find my dad's hulking frame filling the doorway, jaw set in a hard line. Daddy, I croaked out, fresh tears spilling down my cheeks. His arms encircled me in a bone-crushing hug. It's okay, baby girl, he murmured gruffly. I'm here now. Peering over his shoulder, I noticed my mom hovering behind him, wringing her hands anxiously. Dad's message was clear. Nobody messed with his little girl without facing his wrath. Dread sank in my gut, realizing the turmoil that was still to come. But I found grim solace that the worst was finally out in the open. With my parents' steadfast support, I braced myself for the inevitable onslaught from Kyle and his family. Sure enough, within hours of my dad's arrival, a torrent of furious calls and texts bombarded my phone. Ellis, sweetheart, please pick up. Mom and Dad's concerned voices echoed on the voicemail. The Bennetts are here, and things are getting heated. I steeled myself before heading downstairs, my dad's hulking frame a reassuring presence at my side. In the living room, a tense standoff awaited. Kyle was slumped on the couch, head cradled in his hands, as his parents loomed over him like disapproving sentries. To my surprise, Harper lingered in the corner, arms crossed defiantly, and beside her, a grim-faced Brad watched the scene unfold. You've got some nerve showing your face here, Dad growled, his piercing glare fixed squarely on Kyle. Kyle flinched as if struck, his eyes finally meeting mine with a desperate plea. Ellis, please, you have to let me explain. Before he could continue, his father stepped forward, his expression thunderous. No, son. Gregory Bennett's deep baritone cut through the tension like a knife. You don't get to speak after this despicable stunt. I felt a twinge of satisfaction watching Kyle wither under his dad's withering glare. You not only betrayed your fiancé in the worst way, Gregory continued, his voice eerily calm. You brought shame and dishonor on our entire family." Mom squeezed my hand in a silent show of support as the Bennetts erupted into a furious volley of recriminations towards their son. Through it all, Harper simply observed the chaos with a self-satisfied smirk playing on her lips. When she caught my eye, she shot me a venomous glare that cut straight to my core. Pushing off the wall, she slinked towards Kyle and defiantly draped herself across his lap as the tirade continued to swirl around them. "Enough of this," she announced in a bored tone, effectively silencing the room. "Kyle made his choice, and I don't see why we're all still acting so shocked." My blood boiled as she nuzzled against his neck with a victorious grin. Greg turned his blazing glare on her. "You vile, home-wrecking little—" "Dad, stop!" Kyle cried, pulling Harper closer in a twisted show of allegiance. "Ellis and I are done. You all need to accept that and butt out." A deafening silence fell as his words sank in, their callous finality hanging heavy in the air. Instinctively, Brad moved to stand protectively by my side, his jaw clenched with barely contained fury. I finally found my voice, raw but unwavering. "You're right, Kyle," I stated, squaring my shoulders and meeting his gaze head-on. "We are done, but you'll live to regret this." With that vow lingering between us, I turned and walked away, leaving the wreckage of his choices behind me. In the aftermath of the explosive confrontation, life took on a surreal quality. The whirlwind of wedding planning and dreams for our future dissipated like smoke, leaving me adrift. Brad became my anchor during those turbulent weeks, letting me crash at his place until I found my footing again. "The shop's your home as long as you need it, kid," he reassured me with a warm hug. My parents, bless them, alternated staying over to keep me company and make sure I was coping okay. Mom would ply me with comforting, home-cooked meals, while Dad grumbled threats about teaching Kyle a lesson. "He'll get what's coming, Elle," Dad growled one night over a plate of Mom's famous meatloaf. "Mark my words." As the dust settled, news trickled in about the fallout engulfing Kyle and Harper. Apparently, her latest chaotic episode scuttled Kyle's fledgling business and music dreams yet again. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for him being trapped in that toxic cycle. But the ache quickly dissolved, replaced by a hardened resolve. I was finally free of their drama. A few weeks later, Brad pulled me aside at the shop with an uncharacteristically grave expression. "Ellis, I've got some news I think you should hear from me first," he began carefully. "Kyle's officially out of your life. He covered all the cancellation fees for the wedding." I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Part of me still harbored fears that Kyle would try to weasel his way back, resume his twisted grasp on my life. How is he doing?" I found myself asking, surprising even myself. Brad sighed heavily. "Not great from what I hear. Word is Harper's really gone off the rails again. Dragged him down into one of her manic episodes." Her name still made my blood boil, but I felt a strange sense of closure. The karma she wrought on herself and Kyle was punishment enough. "Well, I hope he's finally learned his lesson," I stated firmly, eager to purge the last remnants of their toxicity from my life. "As for me, I'm focused on finding true happiness now, without any of their mind games weighing me down." Brad smiled, patting my shoulder proudly. "That's my girl. You've got your whole life ahead of you to build something real, Ellis." The trash took itself out. Flashing him a grateful grin, I turned back to my work with renewed vigor. For the first time in ages, the future felt brimming with unlimited possibility, no longer tainted by Kyle and Harper's poisonous hold. My life was finally my own again, and I had no intentions of letting anyone jeopardize that hard-won freedom ever again.